Hello and welcome to another edition of Osceola Outtakes, where the Osceola staff, including Charles Fishbein, Osceola recruiting analyst, myself, and our now guru of grab, former FSU wide receiver Kez McCorvey, will join us to help us break down some of the 2021 receivers that Florida State has offered and is actively recruiting. Welcome, Fish.
Yep. Hi. Glad to be here.
Well, Kez, we appreciate you joining us and welcome to you as well.
I appreciate it, guys. I'm excited. I love talking about football, especially the wide receiver position.
Well, and we are very happy to have you here, and we know you're busy. You're a high school coach here at North Florida Christian here in Tallahassee, and obviously working from home these days like the rest of us, but certainly appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to be here with us. And, you know, Kez, obviously you played at Florida State, went on the NFL and CFL, but kind of tell us what you've been doing since your Florida State days quickly, and so our subscribers can kind of get caught up on where you've been and what you've been up to.
Okay, well, I played about 6 years of professional football, and then after that, tore injuries and all that kind of stuff. I retired and went to business and was training athletes. So I was in the athletic field for that many years. So training athletes, training guys for the combine, all that type of stuff. Did that for about 8 years, and then got into coaching. Was a high school coach, and then I was a coach at a small college, and then in the CFL, I coached in the CFL, won 2 Grey Cups in the CFL, and then came back to college at Middle Tennessee, where I actually ended my career at college coaching, was at Middle Tennessee. And then I transitioned back to Tallahassee, and now I work for Fellowship of Christian Athletes. So I get a chance to still deal with coaches, but in a different way, and I love it. But also, I also help, and I haven't given up coaching, I also help at North Florida Christian as well. And so enjoying spending time in Tallahassee, serving Tallahassee, and I love being involved with the Florida State's program in any kind of way possible.
Okay. Well, we appreciate you being here. I know Florida State fans will be excited to hear your voice and see your face. And, of course, one of the questions I have for both of you as we begin to break down these wide receivers that Florida State is recruiting and has offered is, first of all, Kez, as a former college coach, what are you looking for on film when you're watching these highlight packages?
Well, I tell you this right here. When you think about receiver, you got to think about, we always think about just receiver as one position, but receiver is multiple position, and it all depends on what your offense does. And so, you got inside receivers, you got outside receivers, you got different types of inside receivers, you got, space, catch the ball in space and work and get extra yards and run with the ball like an extended running back, or you got guys that are technicians and route runners and all that type of stuff, or guys that can actually block and be more physical inside. So it all depends on what type of offense you want. And then in that, what you're looking for is this right here is, what skill sets do they possess that give them an opportunity to be successful in that position. Outside receivers usually are guys that are probably a little bit bigger. They can compete for the ball, because a lot of times that's what you're doing. You're competing for the ball. You got to have the way of winning deep. Either you're fast, or you so technically sound, or you just big as the world, and you can just go high point the ball and you can fight for the ball. Inside guys usually are guys that are probably more technical. They don't have to be as big. They got to have great feet and awareness and very smart. And so those are different things that you're looking for as receivers and how they would fit into a college offense or even a pro offense.
Well, Fish, what are some of the things you look for in a wide receiver?
The one thing I want to see is if a kid's a natural pass catcher. I think hands, and Kez can elaborate on this more. Some guys can high point the football. I've been told by some college coaches that's a skill set that you either have or you don't. Some coaches have told me they've sat out there and thrown fade routes, and some guys just don't have the ability to high point or time those type of passes. Some guys are really good at it. Greg Carr was one of those guys that was very good at, getting the jump ball or high jumping. And some guys it's not they could be 6'4", but their timing's off. They're just not very good at it. But hands, I remember when George Campbell came out and people were ranking him a 5-star. I just never saw it. Every camp I went to, he fought the ball. It looked like he was catching it with like boxing gloves. And I just never thought I thought he had a chance as a great athlete to maybe play safety, but it's a natural thing. You either could catch the ball or you can't. I've seen guys go out there. There was a guy that signed with Miami a long time ago that came out of Northwestern, and he'd go out to the jugs machine, and it looked like they were throwing him hand grenades. He just could not catch the football, you know. And some guys, they catch it and you don't hear it. If you don't hear it when it hits their hands, you know that kid's a natural pass catcher. And I also look, hey, does a kid extend their hands, or are they a body catcher? Some guys use their body, and then when you get to college level and you start using your body more than your hands, you can drop more passes. So there's certain things I look for. Consistency in the route running. I like to see guys push off. I'm not talking push off the DB, but when they come out of the route, you see one of the guys we're looking at, he gets off the ball real quick. And then he has so much power that he literally, his momentum almost forces a DB to, he gains space. And it's not because of how fast he is. It's his ability to come off the ball clean and get into his route, and the DB loses space between him and himself, and he could be 4'6", and where a guy that's 4'4" doesn't have that ability to get open, but because of his ability to push off on those routes and put his foot in the ground and get that separation, those are the little things that I think you can work with as a receiver coach. A lot of guys, there's guys that are 4'4" guys that, and Kez has seen them, they can't get by anybody. I remember there was a guy that I think it was OJ Murdoch. He signed with Florida. I remember he would go to these camps. He'd run 4.3s. But the one thing you notice every time when he started, he chopped his feet so many times before he even got into his route. And I'm like, he's losing that whatever advantage he had being a 4.3 receiver. He made himself 4.6 because he could not get off the line clean, and he had so much wasted motion. So there's so many little things, and Kez could probably explain it more, that receivers can do. And that's what made a guy like Rashad Green so good, is that he was so clean off the line of scrimmage, and every route was clean. And you never knew what he was going to run. He didn't give away his routes. Some guys give away their routes based off how they come off the line of scrimmage. They'll tell you, hey, I'm basically running a 9 route here because of the way they set up off the line of scrimmage. Good receivers never have that tell. They basically come off the line the same time and same way every time, and that's what makes them so hard to cover.
Absolutely. I agree with you, man. I think that's a lot of the deal. Now, the question for any coaches is right here is does this kid have the skill sets that you can't teach, and can you teach the skill sets that he doesn't have? And that's the problem. I think a lot of guys, when they're recruiting, they don't necessarily look at. They don't look at, okay, man, what are my capabilities as far as a teacher, and do I have enough time to teach this kid the things that he doesn't have to get a diamond in the rough, get a guy that may not have it right now, but I guess I do something very good that I can offset his weaknesses with my strengths, and so that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for, okay, can I teach this kid the things he doesn't have, or does he have something that I just can't teach that. I can't teach 6'5" and run 4.3. Yeah. But I can teach him how to put his foot in the ground. I can teach him how to stay low. I can teach him how to transition on a route given time. But some of these things I can't teach. And so is that valuable enough to offset those weaknesses?
Yeah, well, and of course, a 4.3 speed doesn't mean anything if you got 5'2" hands, right?
Yes, it don't.
If you got hands like an offensive lineman, it doesn't matter how fast you run. And of course, I think that speed obviously is a very important component of being a receiver, but two of the greatest receivers in football history, Jerry Rice and Steve Largent, were 4'6" guys. And Kez, there's been some guys at Florida State that weren't necessarily Blazers, but were pretty good football players, and you were one of them, right? You were a 4'5", 4'6" guy.
I guess I got to admit it. No receiver wants to say that. No receiver wants to admit that he wasn't the fastest guy on the team. But yeah, it's true. The gig is up. It's true.
You were kind of, to me, you were so elusive, but you were elusive. Once you had the ball, you had the ability to move vertically or side to side, and you were kind of slippery. You kind of always reminded me of. I always considered you the Amp Lee of Florida State receivers, and Amp was a hell of a running back.
Yeah.
But he didn't have the best speed in the world, but he did, he made plays.
Yeah, you know what? It's kind of like boxing, right? You ever seen those boxers? They're just so awkward. They're so awkward that you can't get a tail on them, and you know what? And they just can land punches. You can't get them, and that's a little bit like football too. If you got a guy that just got so much stuff, they're not the biggest, not the fastest, but they got so much. They got so much junk. They got a curveball. They got a breaking ball. They got a slider. They got all the stuff right there. You just can't get a beat on them. And next thing you know, they got 15 strikeouts.
Yep.
A lot of FSU's best receivers were never fast guys. I mean, even Peter Warrick. as quick and elusive as he wasn't a 4-3-4 guy.
No.
A lot of that's overrated in my opinion, but it's nice to have a guy that can run a 4-2. But there haven't been a lot of them. There's been a lot of those guys that have gone to FSU and haven't been very good. Where you have the guys like Kez and even Coach Dawsey when he played with Kez. There was plenty of guys that were 4-5, 4-6 type guys that had success at FSU. So.
Well, one of the things Kez has mentioned as we were working our way into this thing is that there's going to be receivers that fit certain roles, and we're going to look at 4 receivers today. Ironically, all from the state of Louisiana, who cover the gamut from being a 4-3 guy to being more of a 4-6 guy. We've got 2 kids that are 6'4" and 2 kids that are 6'1". So the 6'1" guys have the ability to play not only slot, but also as one of the outside receivers positions. And of course, the 6'4" guys are more suited for split end than they are. I don't even know if they call it split end anymore, Kez, but that's what I still call it.
Flanker position, baby.
Yeah, flanker and split end. But so we're going to take a look at 4 guys, all from the state of Louisiana, which Florida State is recruiting heavily under head coach Mike Norvell, who has at least 2 assistants on his staff that spent time either in high school football in Louisiana or college football at Tulane. So that would be Alex Atkins and David Johnson, the recruiting coordinator. So, guys, we want to talk about Destin Pazin, Tyrese Johnson, Keon Coleman, and Brian Thompson, all from the state of Louisiana. For our subscribers, we are going to share their highlight video as Kez and Fish talk us through these highlights. If there's a little lag, you obviously have the opportunity once we're done to go look up these guys on Huddle individually and take a look at them, and maybe the film will be a little bit more clear or cleaner for you. But we do want you guys to get a chance to see who we are looking at and who we are talking about. All right. The first prospect we want to talk about is Destin Pazin. He's 6'1", 180 from New Orleans, Louisiana, Carr High School. He's got offers from Alabama, UF, FSU, LSU, and Oklahoma, to name a few. And guys, I'm going to start his tape and just kind of tell. He had 54 catches for 1,047 yards last year. Kind of tell me what you see in him, Kez, that you like.
Well, I like because he has great feet. You can see from that first initial move right there, just his feet, his ability to come up the line of scrimmage. And then, too, he's physical. I mean, in that first clip, you saw some of the skill sets that he possessed. I mean, he caught a deep ball over a press cover 2 safety. He got hit on the reception, and then he broke a tackle to get to the end zone. I think if we got him, we would be very happy with him. He would be a guy that I think initially can come out and possibly have a chance to play first year.
Fish, what are kind of some of your impressions on Destin?
The one thing I like about him is how clean he is and smooth coming off the line of scrimmage. He reminds me a lot of Rashad Green, who came out of St. Thomas. He's a very good route runner. Everything about him, you can see the consistency in every play. And I know this is a highlight film, but it just looks like every play is the same. No matter what route he runs, you see right there he's running a crossing route, and how clean and how easy he gets open. And he's a natural pass catcher. But you see here on a slant how quick he never gave a DB a chance to make a play on that ball. And that's almost if he runs that route right, it's almost impossible to defend that route. Kez can explain that a little bit more, but everything, whether he runs deep routes, even his deep routes, you always see him getting separation, and his ability to catch the ball. It's clean. You don't ever see him really fighting the football. Of all the receivers we're going to look at today, I think he's the most complete player, and very similar to Rashad, where he could come in and play day one. He would be one of the best wide receiver recruits they've landed probably in the last 5 years.
Yeah, he is actually considered by 24/7 Sports to be the 21st best receiver in the class of 2021. Kez,
you see 20 better ones, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Any additional thoughts on Des, Kez?
Well, I just think when you look at him, you can tell he's been coached at a high level before, because you can look at some of the movement skills. You can look at how he manipulates defenses. I actually looked and see how fast he was, because that was one of my questions. Okay, he's very skilled. He looks sharp. He looks like he's been coached. All right, he understands how to manipulate defenses. He has really good feet, and I mean when he runs, he has his shoulders down. He can high point the ball. Was his speed an issue? And he ran 11.9 at the beginning of this season right here, which would probably been out 10 something. So he's a pretty athletic kid. He's a pretty athletic kid. So really, to me, he has all the things that you would need as a receiver. He can play inside. He can play outside. It looked like to me. And so, I really don't see a downside. The only downside is sometimes when you get a guy that's been coached, can he come and transition when you have a new system? That would be the only downside. But I don't see much downside to him because, you know what, he can come in and plug and play to a certain extent at most programs.
Yeah, that was one of the things I liked about him. And, obviously one of the things that Coach Norvell and his staff have done is they've recruited versatile athletes. And you mentioned the fact that this kid can probably play inside or outside. He's 6'1", so he certainly has the size to play not only inside, but also can line up against smaller DBs or cornerbacks. So a couple of my notes, he's got great speed, seems to get off the line very easily, and what looks to be press man coverage. Of course, I never understood why you would line up in press man and then give someone a free release, but I saw some of that on this tape. And then the other thing, he was willing to come across the middle and looks like he's, good yards after catch. He's an athlete after he gets the ball in his hands.
And another thing that you notice off of the film, and Kez will explain this too, is that his ability to run, he doesn't get run off his routes. He comes off the ball. A lot of guys, they'll drift on their routes, especially high school kids. They'll go off on even on a quick slant, or even any routes that they run. They get off their routes. They don't run clean or straight routes because they drift. And a lot of that stuff, he's already been taught how to come off the line. He knows how to use his hands, and he keeps, like I said, he keeps a straight line when he runs his routes. He's a polished route runner. I like his ability. I think that's why he'll be able to come in and contribute right away.
Yeah.
And go ahead, Kez.
Well, I was going to say this right here too. I mean, in high school, it's hard to catch an average of 5 passes a game because there's so many moving parts in the high school game. It's hard to get your quarterback and your receivers on the page at the same time to get that done. He's caught 54 passes. That means that you have worked enough time with your quarterback and with your game to be able to actually do that, to actually catch 5 passes a game in every game through your high school year to be successful. And that's what most guys can't do. Most guys can't do that enough times in the game to catch 5 balls or 10 balls or 6 balls or whatever balls you need to catch in a game. And so he has kind of the whole package. He can go deep, he can go short. And so, like I said, I love that. And then he's tough. He got high energy, and you can tell he has confidence. Confidence is a big part of the receiving game. A lot of guys are coming in and they don't know that they're good. But when you know you're good, all right, you're free to make plays. And that's what I can tell. He knows he's good.
Yeah, and I've in my time, I've met very few receivers who are not confident. And of course, just so our subscribers know, one of the reasons we featured Dez first is because by all the reports that you read, he is very high on Florida State and has them among his top schools, if not one of his top 2 or 3. Fish, is that correct in my assessment of that?
Yeah, from what I've heard, he's basically the word was he was going to commit to Florida State before this whole coronavirus situation, that he was a guy that they felt like they could get on campus one more time before the summer camp started. That's the main thing, is getting these kids on campus multiple times. And they thought if they got them back on campus another time that they get an early commitment from them. But he's leaning Florida State's way right now. And it'd be a big get. He's a highly regarded receiver. You look at the schools that are recruiting him, it puts a different perspective on things when you look at, hey, who's recruiting him? Well, Alabama, Georgia. It'd be a big get that they're able to compete with those schools right now when these coaches haven't even played a game yet. So,
yeah, I agree with that. I mean, it would change the perception for sure.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's part of the deal too. A lot of those guys, they recruit other guys. I mean, it's kind of like it's kind of like lemmings. You know, when one jumps off the hill, the rest jump off the hill too as well. And so my hope is that we get him.
Yeah, and it looks like Florida State is going to make a priority out of the state of Louisiana with all the connections they have there from not only the two coaches that have coached at Tulane and local high schools in New Orleans, but also I'm sure it was a state that Memphis recruited heavily when Norvell was the head coach there. Okay, the next prospect we want to look at is Keon Coleman, 6'4", 190 pounds from Opelousas, Louisiana Catholic High School. He is considered a four-star recruit by 24/7 Sports, who have him rated as the 17th best receiver in the nation for the class of 2021 and the 5th best overall prospect from the state of Louisiana. So, Fish, I am going to let you start with Keon, since Kez got to go first with this.
22 touchdowns out of 35 passes. I guess this kid, all he does is catch touchdowns. Big kid, you know. This is Florida State needs some big receivers, especially with Terry probably, you know, most likely leaving after this year. I mean, they got lucky that he came back. I think he still has 1 year more of eligibility, but he's a big kid that can run. I mean, you see it. They stretch the field with him on pretty much every play in his highlight film. This is a play that really caught my eye. Here he's playing defensive back, and he flips his hips over, comes back, catches the ball, and gets his feet down. I think that shows you how athletic he is for a big guy. Most big guys can't transition that well from going back to he could play DB. At 6'4", he could play, so you could see his length, his range, and his athletic ability on that play. That play stood out to me more than any other play on his highlight film. And from that standpoint, anything else, you could teach the kid how to run his other routes. He doesn't run a whole lot of routes, so that's one concern coming into the next level. He's going to have to learn more routes out of the route tree. But he does use his size. A lot of tall receivers, they don't use their size. They make themselves small. He plays big. He'll extend his hands and he'll high point the football. He's not as good of a high point of compared to one of the other guys we're going to see, but he does have the ability to go up and get the football. And you go look at him on special teams. I mean, this is another thing that he can do is you put him on punt returns and he's returning kicks. That's only a plus. An added plus to his skill set.
Kez, what are your initial thoughts on Keon Coleman?
Well, I think Fish said the right thing when he said Tamarian Terry. Yeah, so because he reminds me of Tamarian's game as far as, I mean, he's a long ball go getter. He's a big, strong, powerful athlete. He's a basketball player, and so he's really hard and tough. He's tough to cover out there, and I think he's an outside guy. Definitely, he's an outside guy. And he just kind of reminds me of those big, fast, athletic receivers, the Randy Mosses on the outside, you know. And so you can tell when he's running on the field that he's covering a lot of ground. So he's going to be hard for guys to sit on, and he's going to actually help those slot guys on the inside because he can circle the field. He can circle the field, and he can put pressure on your safeties. And so I like him a lot. I like him a lot because he is so good at the things that he is good at. He's good at being an outside deep threat. He's good at catching the ball short. He knows his game, but I think the hard part he's going to have is in college is really learning the other routes in the playbook and being good at those things. I think some of the things that Tamarian has struggled and has gotten to the point where he's overcome now. He's gotten better at to where he can catch more than 33 balls a game or 34 balls a game. You know, I think that would be the only weakness. But the benefit is that his ability level, his talent level is so high that it compensates for the lack of route running ability. And so this is a guy that can be a super diamond in the rough here. This is a guy that probably could be a first round pick, possible guy right here. Or, you know, if he doesn't develop the rest of his routes, he may, you know, he can not. But that's kind of the range that he has. He has a big upside for a receiver. Now, like you said again about DB, man, a 6'4" DB, my goodness. I mean, those guys are hard. They're hard to, you know, pressing is hard to throw over those guys. Those guys are not a dime a dozen. If you can get a guy to play DB at 6'4", man, you got you a gold mine. And so that's what I thought about him.
There's not a lot of those running around, that's for sure.
And though they say you can't teach size and speed, his speed is intimidating for defenses. If you're a DB and there you are, you're 5'11", and this kid's running faster than you. Not forget the fact that he's fat is tall, but his ability to run by you, it allows you to do so much. This kid looks like an SEC player. You talk about these guys that go to the SEC. This looks like a receiver that Mississippi recruits. And you look at a DJ Metcalf. This is what DJ probably looked like in high school. A big, long, athletic receiver, raw, but the upside is just limited. It's unlimited. I mean, if he ran his more routes and was cleaner running his routes, he'd be a 5-star player. I think that's the only thing holding him back is his limitation on his routes.
Yeah. Well, I think he can learn that, though. I mean, I watch his movements. I see basketball coordination, and I see him being able to pivot on one foot and stop on one foot and change direction. And I can see that, but I just don't think he's been asked at a high enough level. But I think he can do that easy because you can tell some of those basketball nervous system patterns that he learned from basketball, they carry over here. I see him stepping and setting DBs and making them change direction. And so I think he can learn that. I think for him, it's going to be a time of discipline, a coach getting on him and working with him and asking them to learn those skills and be consistent with them. I think he can do it.
I got a question for both of you. Obviously, some of the things that you pay attention to when you're watching high school videotape is what you don't see. And one of the things you don't see with Keon is he never operates inside the hash marks. Is that a concern for either one of you?
I'll let Kez take the lead on this one.
Well, it is, but it all depends on what type of offense you run. Some guys on some of the offense they don't go inside, and so they would not be an issue. Now you always have an issue when you have guys that have limited things that they do. Okay, you want to be able to use a guy in any kind of way you can, but I think if you're going to use him in a certain way, then you don't worry about that. You get him to do what he can do. All right, you teach him that stuff, and if he gets it, you give it to him. But if he can't do it, you don't make him fit into that square peg.
One of the things I'd like to see, Kez said before, he's an outside guy. Sometimes you take a guy like this, move him inside, and get him on a linebacker. I really think you could extend the middle of the field with someone like him. You could almost put him in an H-back role or put him in a off tackle role where he's almost like a tight end in the slot type guy and stretch that middle of the field because his ability to do so much, he could change direction. And you put him on a linebacker, I think it's over. You may as well just start the band playing. He's that talented.
Yeah, I was impressed with his size and athleticism. Obviously, he'd be a nightmare matchup against smaller corners, and of course, a red zone threat, which you can't have enough big guys down in the red zone. It helps you extend the field vertically, in my opinion. I mean, when I say vertically, I mean up and down, not downfield, but throw the jump ball. And he does cover a lot of ground quickly. By the reports that I have read, Keon is also a guy that's very high on Florida State and is also considered to be taking Mississippi State, Oklahoma, Penn State, Texas A&M, and Virginia very seriously. So Florida State looks to be in the middle, but you guys believe he is an outside receiver?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, I do too as well. I kind of put him in the category of a Tamarian Terry. He's a guy that's so physical and so big. They got so much upside on the outside to where, they just create the advantage naturally being an outside receiver.
And with
I think people would be very excited to get another Tamarian Terry for sure.
And with Terry moving on, this kid could slide right into that spot. He'll have an opportunity right away to play. So I'm sure that's something that the Florida State coaches are selling them on, that, hey, listen, you're going to have the chance to not only compete, but start as a freshman.
So, absolutely.
Any recording?
No small.
All right, guys, the next guy we want to talk about is Brian Thomas, 6'4", 190 from Walker High School in Walker, Louisiana. He is also considered a 4-star by 27-4 Sports. He is ranked as the 49th best overall prospect in the nation. the 7th best receiver in the nation and the 2nd best overall prospect in the state of Louisiana. He is being recruited by a host of schools, including offers from Alabama, Florida State, Georgia, and LSU. So, Kez, back to you. What do you see about you like about Brian Thompson, number 8?
I think Brian is a true outside receiver as well. He high points. He's a basketball player, and he high points the ball very well. Oddly enough, I kind of looked and saw, did he run track? Does he run track too? Being 6'4", you can't sometimes tell watching the film how fast they are. But he's a very good track athlete as well too. When I look at him, I just see those skills. And also, I see this right here, and I see really great potential footwork. And when I say great potential footwork, I mean, there's certain footwork that you have to be a receiver to be efficient. Okay, you can't cut off your left foot. You got to have your weight over your feet, all the type of thing like that. And from a big guy, you usually don't see where guys do that, but he can. He can. I think for him, is understanding when he gets to college, the speed of the game, how fast the game gets, and him adapting to that, because he doesn't necessarily always have to play fast in high school. But I can see the footwork for a guy that's 6'4". That is the footwork of the elite guys. The elite guys do this type of footwork, and I see that in him.
Fish, what are your thoughts on Brian?
The one thing, and Kez brought it up, it is difficult to see how fast a kid he runs because it's so easy for him. He doesn't ever look like he's just opening up on the football field. He's naturally fast, but it almost looks like on plays he's running by guys and jogging while they're standing in place. That's one thing that impresses me. He's more polished than Keon at this time. I think he's a little further ahead. He's another guy I think can contribute right away. I don't know if his upside is as great as Keon. I think this kid's very good, but I think he's almost he looks like he's more developed, and there's not as much room for improvement at the next level. I like the way he pushes off on his routes, and we talked about it before, that being able to high point the football, he attacks the ball in the air. If the ball's in the air, it's his. He's not going to allow the defensive back to snatch it from him. You could tell he has good hands. It seems to come natural to him. He doesn't look like he fights the ball on film. I'd have to see him in person. But you don't see too many balls that he lets get close to his body. It seems like every ball that he catches, his hands are extended. Even on that pass, you don't see him. That's a route that a lot of receivers will allow that ball to get into their body, and sometimes you'll see them drop it. But he seems more of he's a naturally gifted receiver and runs good routes. There's not much not to like about him. He'd be another good
What
guy.
I liked right here is he sat down and gave his quarterback, who was scrambling a spot, he found some open space and sat down. He's got he seems to have some natural football instincts to me. This is one of the things that, I mean, like you said, it's huddle highlight tape, but certainly there just indicates that, he's got a football IQ. He understands where he needed to be to help his quarterback out right there.
Well, he definitely found the opening there. He gave his quarterback a chance, and a lot of times that's the difference between a completion and a sack, is just sitting down in that soft part of the zone and saying, hey, you know what? They say you can't go pro taking a profit. That's one of those plays that exists there. So,
Kenneth, how often do you see the high school receivers that have that kind of intelligence to know that, hey, my quarterback's in trouble. I need to sit down and give him a spot to throw the ball?
Well, I'm going to be a proponent of playing multiple sports. Basketball players know how to find the ball and get the ball a pass from a point guard, and baseball players know how to judge the ball in the distance right here. And so, to me, when I look again, I say it again. He's a basketball player. He played basketball. I'm not saying he's a basketball player, but he played basketball, and some of those skill sets cross over. And so, if you can get somebody to understand how to do that, you don't have to teach that. The thing a coach hates the worst is this right here. Having to teach the whole game. No, sit down, okay? Hey, get a first down. It's 2 minutes. There's a minute left in the game. Don't get tackled in bounds. And when you get guys that are intelligent enough to make adjustments on the field, that's super invaluable. I don't know if we put enough value on that, of having guys that are intelligent enough to be a coach on the field. But if you can find a guy like that, that is so valuable in the context of trying to win a game.
Well, Kenny Shaw was one of those types of players at FSU. He knew where he was on the field at all times, and if it was 3rd and 8, he ran 9 yards. There's some receivers that run 7 and get tackled. So when you're talking about football IQ, this looks like one of those kids that understands where he's on the field, what he needs to do to get it's not always about the big play. The big play is going to come. He understands that when you're watching him. He's like, let me get this first, and then I'll worry about it after. A lot of guys worry about just making big plays. It's, hey, just make the plays consistently. Make the 8, 9 yard, 10-yard catch. The big play eventually will happen, especially at a school like Florida State.
Absolutely, and that's part of the deal. Part of the deal is this right here: is some of the players on the teams, you guys, they don't. You can't have them do too much. Some of the guys, you can put the pressure on them to do a lot in the offense and help everybody else to do a lot too as well. So I'm not going to put that on him, but he looks like a very smart, intelligent player. I don't think he has the explosiveness that the last kid we just watched has, as far as his ability to just to blow the whole field away. But I think he has a lot of different skills that can give him advantages in a different way. Like I said, I liked the way when he gets to the ball, he runs with the ball. He finishes with his shoulders low. He knows how to protect himself. He catches the ball away from his body, and so he's a good big target. And he's 6'4". So those are skill sets that you don't have. But now what he doesn't have is he doesn't have the explosive speed, and he doesn't have the explosive quickness that makes you say, wow.
You go back to like 3 or 4 plays before this one, and he was making a play on the sideline. What impressed me is it was on the right sideline right here. He ran the route where the DB never knew the ball was coming. He knew the ball was coming, but he doesn't give up what's going on to the DB. A lot of times a DB can read a quarterback's eyes or can see how the wide receiver. But right here, he's got this guy beat because he doesn't know the ball's even coming,
Yep.
and he's a polished kid. That's something that he's either been taught or it's something that he was born with. But a lot of guys don't know how to do that, and that's a skill set that's impressive on that play that I noticed right there.
Yeah, I was impressed with he's got some natural running instincts after he gets the ball in his hands. He's got the ability to make some people miss, and he may not be as explosive as Dez or Keon, but certainly a guy that I've liked based off his again, it's highlight tape, but he high points the ball well. He'll go up and get it. He's got good body control and shows good concentration.
Let me say one thing right here too. I tell all the tall guys this right here, and he does a really good job of this right here. Is a tall guy, you have the advantage on both planes. You have the ability to, if you can play low and play tall. You have a wide catch radius because you can play low, and playing low gives you quickness and ability to change direction, but then playing high gives you a chance to be able to extend and catch all those balls in the radius areas that a big guy can do that. And I see him on the film. When you see him catch the ball game, what is the first thing he does? First thing he does is he catches the ball, his shoulders go lower than the DB that he's going against. DBs that he's going against are probably like 5'11", and a lot of times when he catches the ball, he's probably lower than that guy that's trying to tackle him. That is a great skill and ability that is underrated especially for a big receiver.
Yeah, one of the notes that I wrote before we came onto this not podcast, but video cast today is I wrote he has a great catch radius. It's funny that you said that, but I put that in my notes. It doesn't seem like there's any pass that he's not able to catch. If he gets his hands on the ball, right shoulder, left shoulder, he could catch fade routes. He could catch over the shoulders. He could catch those balls that where the quarterback throws it short on purpose, and the DB is off the route. He is able to do so much. You can see why he's higher rated than the other guys. I mean, they're all 3 of the guys we've looked at are really good. I don't think you could go wrong signing any of the 3, and you can argue which one's better, but they all have certain skill sets. It's some guys though are based on, hey, this guy's really good. What's he going to look like in 2 years? And that's what you have with Keon. This is a kid that can, like I said, I really think he's another kid that if they sign, of Florida State. It doesn't matter where he signs. This is a guy that's going to get on the field early because of how well-rounded he is as a receiver.
I agree. I think he's a kid that another plug-and-play kid that you can get him out there, and you have to make a decision on do I redshirt this kid? Do I redshirt this kid because he can probably crack the lineup some kind of way in some kind of place?
We talked about it before we started taping. It's kind of, we all have different rankings on all four of these kids, even though they're not all the same player. Obviously, Dez and Tyrese, who we're fixing to take a look at, are inside guys. But I really like Thomas as much as I like Coleman. So like you said, they're all three takes if you can get them. They're no-brainers. But I was really impressed with some of the natural football ability.
If you're going to rank them based on where they're at now, I think you're right. Payson and him are the 1, 2. If you're going to rank them 3 years from now, will that other kid reach his potential? The other one is based off of potential. He has NFL first-round talent upside. And we've seen a lot of those guys come through, and they've been there before, and they haven't made it. I've seen him many times. But if you're going to take 2 or 3 receivers, if he's a second or third receiver in your class, he may end up the best 1, 2, 3 years. Terry was one of those guys. FSU, he was a late take. I mean, they found him late in the process. And you look, he may be the best receiver they've signed since Rashad Green and Kelvin Benjamin. And he was a 3-star kid. So he was an undervalued. But if you saw the upside, that's the one thing with Coleman. I mean, in potential doesn't mean a whole lot once they get to college. All that doesn't matter but if the kid's a hard worker and is willing to learn, he has the most upside of the 3, in my opinion. But that it's the other 2 you would take because they are plug and plays, and if you need guys to come in right away and contribute, which FSU does, they don't have a lot of talent at the wide receiver position after this year, then you know what, those are guys that you'll probably focus on a little more because you don't have to wait for a long time for them to develop.
Well, and one of the things that makes recruiting the inexact science that it is some kids do peak in high school and are as good as they're ever going to get. You don't know who those are until 2 and 3 years later once you get them on your campus.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that I look for, and I didn't speak about this before, and Kez will understand this. This is why I like to evaluate guys in person. I remember. There was a guy, I remember going to FSU's camp, and there was a kid, Lewis Murphy. He ended up at University of Florida, played in the NFL, and Greg Carr. They were both at the same FSU camp. And it always stood out to me why Lewis made it in the NFL and Greg didn't. And if you go back to the football camp at Florida State, Lewis was the guy that was always at the front of the line. He was the one that it seemed like he was doing 20 reps while Greg was always doing 1. And while Greg was always the more talented of the receivers, Lewis was the one that there was something in him that drove him to make him a better player. He didn't like the fact that Greg was getting all the attention. And when Greg went to receiver, Lewis went to DB. And that's something that I don't think you can teach and you don't see on film is how competitive. It happened one year. There was a guy named Vidal Hazelton that was rivals and scout rated him the number 1 receiver. I remember going up to the Rutgers camp, and all these Florida DBs were calling him out. And, I mean, they basically called his manhood out. And he did not want to step on that field and go and compete. And that always stuck out to me. And if you looked at his career, I'm not saying it's 100% that kid can't make it, but there's something in that kid that I saw that day that, hey, he didn't want to come out there and go against – and I said, there's no way this is the number 1 receiver. The number 1 receiver would take his shirt off and go, let's go. Let's go at it. And see, you think you're that good and try to embarrass that DB. So that's something that you don't see on the film is how much drive do these guys have. They look – there's a reason it's a highlight film. We take the best plays of this prospect. I mean, if a kid has 35 catches and he has 22 touchdowns, though, I mean – you could have made a 20-minute highlight film because 22 of his plays were touchdowns. So it does tell you his upside. But that work ethic, that's what's we've watched it in this Jordan documentary. How many guys have that drive to be great? The potential's great, but there's been a lot of guys that have gone to Florida State, whether it's a Fred Rouse There's guys like that had all the talent in the world, but they get there and they think they know more than the coaches, and they're going to do it their way, and they're not going to work hard, and they're not going to, I remember when, Rashad Green came out of high school, and one of the questions asked of me by Jimbo was, hey, what do you like about Rashad Green? I said, Coach, he's going to be the first guy that goes to practice. He's going to be the last one to leave. He's going to be able to run routes. He's going to be the first. He's going to be able to play as a freshman. The kid loves football, and that's something you can't teach these kids. Is that football is one sport that if you don't love it, that you could have all the athletic ability in the world, you will be exposed, and that's something that's so important when you're evaluating. And that's why I think, especially this spring, that's going to hurt a lot of these colleges, not having that in-person evaluation, not having those summer camps. You're going to basically evaluate kids off of a highlight film, and you're rolling the dice this year. And it's going to be interesting to see how this class this year, who gets it right 2-3 years from now, who got it right when they were evaluating these kids.
Oh,
I totally agree with that. I totally
Yeah.
agree that in-person evaluation is going to be sorely missed. And I see a lot of schools, not just Florida State, offering a ton of 2023 kids who they have not gotten a chance to even meet yet. So it is interesting to me, but we do want to take a look at one final prospect that we can continue the conversation on the inexact science that is recruiting after that. But we want to take a look at Tyrese Johnson, who plays at New Orleans Booker T. Washington High School, another 4-star wide receiver. He is rated as the 56th best receiver in the nation, the 9th best prospect in the state of Louisiana, and he has offers from a list of schools that include Arizona, Arkansas, Houston, Colorado, Kansas, and Miami.
Football is important, man, and it's part of the culture.
All right, Kez, we got Tyrese Johnson here on his highlight tape. I believe he's number 4 down here at the bottom of the screen.
Yeah, this kid right here. I mean, look at this first run right here, and it's for him. It's passion and desire. When I see him play, I see passion and desire. We were just talking about that, alpha dogs. Who was an alpha dog? And when I watch him play, I think alpha dog. I think this kid right here is a kid that, I don't care if you got seniors on your team right here, he's not going to back down. He is going to go and play ball and play hard as he possibly can. And he's going to go right at your neck on every play. So that's the intangibles that I see when I watch him play is I see, crap, this kid, he wants to play. He's playing physical. He don't care. You can tell that he believes he's the top dog on the field. I don't care where he's at. Now, skill-wise, I think he has to develop. I think he has some natural skill, natural movement skills, natural ability to run with the ball, change direction. I think route running is where he probably has to improve on at probably the next level. High pointing that ball, my goodness, he goes and attacks the ball. But I think where probably the strength is a competitiveness, his strength, his physicality. The weakness will probably be just his route running and his ability to understand how to attack defenses and run routes and all that type of stuff and footwork. But just looking at him as a ball player, I really think he can play a bunch of different positions. This is the guy here. I think he can play defense. He's probably a great, outstanding defensive player. It's physical. And then I think he can play running back too as well. When I look at him, I say, man, you know what? He can possibly play running back. His movement skills, his size, his physicality, he definitely can play running back as well and be a mismatch in so many areas.
The first play of the highlight film, if you go back there, we talk about this. He puts his foot in the ground. He creates separation right there. The DB didn't have a chance, but that play stood out. It's just the lack of consistency. He runs a good route there, and then you'll see him get a little sloppy on some other routes. So he needs to refine his route running skills. I'm not saying it can't be taught. I mean, he does. He's the least polished of the 4 receivers we've watched, but you see right there him pulling away from guys. He has speed. He's built almost like he could play running back too. He's not just strictly a receiver. Like Kez said, he could probably be a wide receiver, a running back, a DB. He runs a little flat-footed, which like you watch him, it looks like his feet are on the ground more than it's an odd thing. He almost runs like Rock Preston used to run. But he has the ability to stretch the field, and he has that skill set that you look in a receiver. But he's a guy that I think if he comes in, he's going to have to take a red shirt. I don't think he's ready to play right away. you could probably use him on special teams or in certain situations and get him on the field because he's got speed. He can stretch the field. But you want to teach this kid how to play the game of football the right way and develop him for 2 years down the road. And he's a guy that's a second or third year player compared to some of the other kids we've watched so far.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's definitely what he is. But that's not a negative. I think sometimes people think that, man, getting redshirt, that's negative, or waiting, that's negative. I think that's to his benefit because he already has a certain level of talent. And I think for an offense to be able to use him properly and not, have to sit there and have to tell him to play every time or have to dumb down the offense to let him execute the stuff. Not saying he's not smart. I'm sure he is smart, but just his skill sets would allow him to be in different positions and get open and have success early in a complex offense.
Yeah, and I think, listen, you don't want to be in a situation where you're counting on your freshman at every position to come in and play. You want them to have ideally, most coaches would like to have a year to redshirt them or now get them experience in those 4 games and save a full year of eligibility for the following year because it says a little bit about your program when you're having to play a bunch of true freshmen. So I agree with that, but I was impressed. One of my notes was even though he's not small, he's 6'1", 190. To me, he plays bigger and stronger than that. That was one of mine. And then he does have good speed. He does not get the full speed quite as quickly as Destin Payson, but he is a tough physical kid. There's no doubt about that. And, obviously here you see him on defense making an interception. He's got great ball skills.
I hate to compare him to a Hall of Fame player like Anquan Bolden, but he wears the same number.
Yeah.
His way of how he plays is similar. Anquan made plays because he was physically better than everybody else, and that's what this kid looks like. And you saw it as Anquan went on to the NFL. Nobody could have projected what he was going to become because he became better every year as a player, and eventually became a great player. But that's what this kid looks like, one of those guys that once he learns how to do everything right, he's going to be very good, but he's not there yet.
Well, I thought the same thing, and I'm leery of making comparisons, but that's all we can do. But right here, he should have sat here, Kez. It's a little, this is where the other kid was a little bit more advanced as a football player, in my opinion. He probably should have sat down. They got open, though. But anyway, there's small differences in these kids, and but all 4 of them have outstanding potential. But to go back to what you said about Anquan, just the size, he's, 6'1", 190, very plays up with a physical nature for wide receiver, which, they're more physical than they get credit for across the board. But certainly that was the same comparison I made, and I'm leery of making them. But, that's kind of, you got to, part of the recruiting process is projecting kids and, who could they be? You see them do it with the NFL draft every day for the last 3 months. Who does so-and-so remind you of? So it's a natural thing to do for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, and when I look at him right now, I asked this question right here. When the ball's in his hand, he has elite quickness, but off the line, I didn't see those same type of movement skills that you would need from that guy that has the moves with the ball in his hand. So it didn't mesh up to where when his ball's in his hand, man, I mean, you couldn't even tackle him. But come off the line of scrimmage, he didn't utilize those same moves in the in his repertoire. And so I'm wondering, okay, what's going on? And I can accredit that to probably not enough experience actually having to work on those skill sets. And so he's prime. He needs to develop some more experience to utilize the quickness he already has.
Well, see, I'm already learning because I said that was the first note I had on him was I compared him to the last guy that I saw. And I said, he's got great, once he gets to full speed, he's fast, but he did not have the same quickness off the line that Dez had. And of course, you gotta compare him against somebody, right? So, yeah. But I want to go back to before we finish this up. I do want to ask both of you. We've all talked about the fact that coaches are not going to be able to evaluate these kids in person in their junior spring practice. How big an impact we can talk about it. About Florida State specifically later in another podcast or video cast, but how how big a deal is that when you are the differences between these kids are sometimes minute, and you're looking for the one little thing that separates them, whether it's demeanor or strength or the attitude at practice or their coachability. How, in y'all's opinion, is, you deal with college coaches all over the United States, Fish, and you've been a college coach, Kez. How is this going to impact recruiting as a whole?
I personally think it's going to have a big impact because you're seeing a lot of kids commit early. I think, and you're going to have a lot of coaches probably wanting to get their classes wrapped up, but not being able to be around prospects. I remember one college coach telling me he likes to have kids on campus 3 times before their senior year. One, if you get them 3 times, you feel like you have a chance to lock them up. But being around them, how they socialize with some of the other players and other guys on the team, they learn a lot from the players that are already on the team when those guys come on campus. How does this guy respond around other guys? Is he going to be coachable? Is he going to be a locker room guy? A lot of those things they're not going to know. They're just basically going to roll the dice this year. And like I said, it's going to be interesting to see who gets it right. I think a lot of guys may go off a list, and you're going to find out, hey, we got a bunch of 5 and 4 stars, but we find out later, are those 5 and 4 stars the Fred Rouses, the Marcus Balls, the Callahan Brights, the guys that look good on signing day, but none of them ever show up on campus or live up to the potential that they have. Rankings don't matter once you get on campus. The players that are already on the team, everybody knows it's a clean slate. You don't carry those 5 stars to you to that practice field. And it's going to be interesting to see, do these guys get it right? They are going to really have to get to know these guys off of phone calls and video conferences. And I guess it's going to be like Tinder. You're going to have to just roll the dice that the date's going to work out, so it'll be interesting. But that's why they get paid a lot of money. And we're just enjoying the process here. So.
I'm scared of you, man. I'm scared of you.
You're scared of me?
We've had our first Tinder reference in recruiting.
There's nothing to be scared of. Hey, I've heard about it. I've never been.
Yeah, me too.
My wife's in the other room. I'm surprised you didn't even hear me say it.
You're whipping, boy. You're gonna whipping. Hey, I agree with you. I agree with you totally, man.
She's got this room with a recording in it. I'm going to pay the price later.
Yes,
you saw the haircut she gave me. That's why I'm wearing a hat today. I don't want anybody to see my hair.
Hey, I agree with you, man. I think this is it's kind of like a wedding. It's kind of like getting married, right? Because the person that you are inviting to be a part of your program, they gotta be sold out and bought into you as well, and your staff and your program as well. And so if a kid is not properly recruited, right, and not properly courted, right, sometimes they come in and they kind of like, I don't know. I thought I made a good decision, but and they're not sold out. They're not sold out. So when they come in, they got some baggage of holding back things with them already. And I think it's the same thing about the coach too as well. They do a good job on this kid right here. When you have those relationship times and where you meet and you get the chance to know a kid and they know their parents, you know their background, and you see them at practice, you see them you're sold on them. And so when you come in, guess what? You're already sold out into this kid. And I think you don't have that process in place, because you miss it because of the lack of travel and the lack of opportunity to go see it during spring and the lack of relationship. But that's important. That's important. To build, and I think we're going to miss that this year with the COVID-19 pandemic here.
We might need to come back and do a overall comprehensive view of how COVID-19 has affected recruiting from the standpoint of not being able to see these kids in person. But guys, appreciate you guys joining us today. As always, we appreciate your insight, Fish and Kez. Hope to have you back.
Kez.
Often as you want to be, Fish. We would love to have you as our guru of grab the full time.
Well, bring it on, baby. Bring it on.
Sounds good, man.
I'm fixing to hashtag it on Twitter.
Oh, don't do me like that. No.
Put it out to the world.
Hey, Kez is my boy, man. Me and him go back a way. We've always got along, and he honestly is one of the great people that I've met in this business, and that's no lie. He is a good There's no fake about him, man. Honestly, I can promise you that.
Well, I know that he knows what he's talking about. My dad, who used to coach at Florida State, well, he's been retired from coaching now for 3 years, but Kez mentioned it the other day. Kez does some chalk talk type stuff on social media, Facebook Live coaching sessions, and he said a couple times that he's found Dad watching his chalk talk. So Dad doesn't listen to anybody. So and Kez, I've known Kez a long time, and we are truly grateful that you would take time out of your schedule to do this for us. And sincerely, I hope that we'll get you back. And just for both of you guys know, we do have Osceola happy hour tomorrow at 6 p.m. I'll be happy to send you a invite. We'd love to have both of you, but hopefully we'll be able to sit down either later this week or next week and do another one of these.
Sounds good to me.
Me too.
All right, guys.
Thank you, Fish.
Take it easy.
Thank you, Pat.
Yeah, thank y'all.
Fish, love you, man. See you
Thanks,
later, brother.
man.
Love you, Pat. See you
All right.
later, brother.
All right, Kez, be careful.